Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Connected. I'm your host, Andrea Dragonfly. I'm excited to say that I have a special guest this evening, a dear friend and a longtime spiritual woman on the planet doing her beautiful thing. And we're going to be talking about family dynamics and lineage karma. So before we bring her on, we just want to do a really quick review because first of all, this show, Connected, again, talks about how everything in our life is connected. And so as we are bringing forth different ideas, it's an invitation for you to take this information, bring it into yourself, and allow it to inform you, allow it to connect you in and expand you, because everything here is about expanding our consciousness, right? So for the last several weeks, we've been doing this whole series on karma, karmic relationships, intimate relationships, casual relationships, and we've been moving into the family dynamics. I talked about how karma is actually part of our family dynamic. Karma is also connected to our personal karma. So if we look back at last week, it was really about this process that as we go through life to death, we have our experience. And then when we go through death to life, we go through and we have that reflection piece. And within that reflection piece, as we get ready for a new life, we pick a family. We pick an environment, especially that our family, comes from, that's going to be the most conducive for our learning environment. So this is all about growing our spirit forward. And so our guest this evening, her name is Lynn Christianson. She's been working with the transgenerational healing modality called family constellations. And this is a healing modality that can be very connected to a lot of different types of therapy work. And we'll get into a little bit of that. But with her and my conversations, I definitely brought it into the karmic patterns. And so tonight we're going to focus more on karma within the transgenerational healing modality of family constellations. And of course, there's lots of information out there in the world. So you're definitely encouraged to go to YouTube, where there's a lot of beautiful little pieces, different people that are doing that. And we'll add a little bit more information on that as we go through the evening tonight as well. But I'd love to I'm honored to have Lynn Christianson be my guest tonight. So I'd love to welcome Lynn.
Hello. Hello, Andrea, and everyone in your show. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so honored to be here tonight.
And it's an honor to have you here tonight. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. And so you and I have definitely had many conversations about family constellations as a person, being in the United States and being exposed to many different types of therapies and modalities for healing. I had to say that when you and I first met about 7 years ago, I wasn't really familiar with family constellations then. And as a person who's in the Denver metro area, Boulder in particular, which happens to be a mecca of information, spiritual information, as well as different types of healing, modalities, I was quite surprised in, to be exposed to this. And so if you could go ahead and just share a little bit about, about this modality. And of course, tonight we're talking about karma. So we're going to bring it together. and actually have that angle on it, but also talk about how this isn't always seen as a karmic process as well. Okay.
Right, right. Well, family constellation would be a tool. I would say a tool, therapy tool to work on family and all that I am that has to do with the family system. So this therapy started in the 80s, and so it's pretty new technique to work with, right? And but the what it's when you come to this kind of therapy, what you are looking for is the healing of the inner child, and also um, accepting where you're coming from and who you are, and understanding more about yourself, and of course the healing process and what we're here for, something like
Yeah.
that, with love, forgiveness, and compassion for all the ancestors that I am who I am because of them, right? So recognizing them, it's kind of like just a tool. And so it's very interesting to understand the system.
Great, and thank you. Yes, that's a nice background piece of on that. Now, when I think of family constellations, and of course, I've been talking a little bit about how I've been a long time student of astrology, and I think of constellations and how certain stars are set up, and how all of that has an energy and a dynamic. And so, when we look at the dynamic within the family, and we look at it as within like the constellation of how that family is set up. Can you talk a little bit about that to help inform, our audience as to, how does that constellation word even work within the family constellation, right?
Well, the funny thing is, the creator of this therapy spoke German. So actually, the real name has nothing to do with constellation. It was more about putting each part in its place. Uh, but when it was translated to English, they set it up as a constellation because one piece of the constellation has to do with another piece, and each one affects the other. So if one moves, the rest of them move with it, right? Because it's a system. So I think that's the reason they put the name of family constellation, because it works that way.
Understandable. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So go ahead and share a little bit about that family dynamic. Would you go ahead and, talk about
Sure.
how the family can be like set up, because for whatever reasons I still see that as a constellation, even though that's not what it's set up to be, but I make that connection, right? And so if you can chat about that for a little bit and see if we can make that connection for others as well.
Of course, we come from a system, and what the system, let's see it as a company, and so the company has this goals and all these things that want to happen, and so it's something like that. The first ones in the family created a concept of what their um, the thing important things in their life were. They wanted to be a couple and have their family and all this, and so it starts growing and growing, and someone there in the family, and I'm talking about ancestors, well, they went out of the system of how it was created, and so this is a collective, because it's a family tree, right? And so it's a collective work. And even if you don't know it here, your soul or the family soul knows. And so if one person goes out of it, so it moves the whole system, and so it keeps happening and happening. And what the family wants to is go back to what the goals are of that family, right? And so if someone comes out of it, it moves the whole system. And the next generation will try to make it right. And so we talking about karma, we pick that family tree and we pick someone that went out of that system, and we have the opportunity to do it in a different way, but we have to experience the same thing that an ancestor um, didn't fix, let's say.
Can you
I don't know
explain?
if,
Yeah, can you explain a little bit what you mean when you say that family member goes out of the system? So I think
let's
that can be
say
confusing.
let's say when this family's values or whatever are the together family, father, mother, and all this, and let's say someone didn't get married and had children, so it comes out of this commands of the family of having this kind of like family. So that's what I try to mean on someone that comes out of the it's kind of like a contract. Oh, my family has to do this and be this way. So whoever goes out of this, then that's when the whole system changes, because there's a theory, is the systematic theory, that says that when one piece comes out of place, the rest of them will do everything for it to balance and to work. So that's
So
the reason I always say there's no um, what's how do you say it, um, these kinds of families, every family, even if it's dysfunctional, it is functional, because in if it's not functional, something will happen to make it function.
gotcha. So also, and I think I'm just going to kind of try to do some clarifications too. So if the family is about, okay, here are my children, and what I want is for each of my children to go and get married and have their children, and I want to be grandparent, right?
Right,
And
right,
maybe you have three children. And so two
right,
of those children actually go get married and they have children. But the
right,
third child, or one of them and within the three, decides, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to have children in that life, right? So
right.
of course, if we're thinking about the lineage and it going through different generations. Does it then stop at that person? Is that where that person ends, Or
Changes the way that the family is. That's why there's always someone that will come and break that, because it's not making sense, and even if it was working, it's not working for them. And this is when it's part of the karma that you have been talking about. My soul decided to come into this family to come, let's say, to what's best for the system, not what someone thought was the best for the system, right? And so it comes and says, okay, we're doing it a different way now, right? Because this is the best for the survival of this family or this tree.
so even in a couple like generations ago, especially in the United States, and I would like to let our audience know that I didn't mention this as I was introducing Lynn, but Lynn is a Mexican American. And so she was born in Mexico and had a Mexican upbringing. Her father was American,
Yes,
and so her culture is different than the United States somewhat, right? And so
right,
within the United States, we had something where many of our parents, grandparents, you know, were laborers, and they went to out of high school, they went directly into different jobs. And then we had certain families, of course, were like, oh, here comes this new generation, the child wants to go to college. And this is the first generation. And we even to this day in the United States have different types of um, support, different grants and things like that um, for the kids who are going to be first generation college students. So that in a certain way can then change the dynamic or the constellation, because you are going from this place where you only had so much education into the point where you're like, okay, now we're going to bring into further education on top of that, and that can then change the dynamic. It can change the socioeconomic dynamic even within that family. Is that also what?
That's right. That's right. So we are, the world is changing, and the families want to keep the old ways and the traditions and all this, but that's not the best for the family. So the family also has a soul, right? Is the family soul. Um, and as you've been sharing, is the family karma also, right? But we have to adjust to the everything that is has been moving, but the old ones don't want that change,
Right.
right? And that's why we have been struggling, because for a period of time everything was the same for some periods of time, but nowadays everything is so different from generation to generation.
Right.
And so the newer members of the system are saying, hey, this is not functioning anymore. We need to make some changes. And